Joined now by Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, Letterman Row, along with Joey Kaufman of the Columbus Dispatch. Tim, we've not heard too much out of the Woody Hayes, little bits here and there. What are you hearing? How have things gone this week? More importantly, how's the health of this football team? What are you hearing?
I'm hearing things have gone pretty well. I mean, we're not going to get a definitive answer on who's in and who's out, so to speak, from the availability list, probably right up before the game in New Orleans. But I'm hearing things are going well. I know Chris Olave is expected back. Some of those other guys might be on the tight list, the way I understand it. But I hear things are going well for the most part.
Joey, you look at the COVID-19, it is still out there. It has not gone anywhere. At this point, is that the biggest fear for both Ryan Day and Dabo Swinney heading into this game week?
I think that's certainly on the top of the list, because you don't want to come into a situation where it's like the Michigan State game and you're missing 3 of your 5 starters on the offensive line, and then you start moving one of your guards to center. You don't want to have to go through that type of arrangement in a national championship game. These games are tough enough as they is, much less trying to deal with a significant setback like that. And I think it's why Ohio State, for example, did not have players go home for Christmas. They stayed on campus Thursday, Friday, Saturday throughout Christmas weekend, because there's a travel risk. If they go home to see their families, you could pick up the virus at an airport or a rest stop and bring it back into the facility. They don't want that. And I think it speaks to the urgency that this team has to be healthy and win this game.
Tim, off the field, Dabo Swinney heading into the selection was critical of Ohio State. He wasn't the only one, but how few games they played. I'm sure Ryan Day and the players have heard that talk. Does that figure in? Is that bulletin board material, do you think?
Number one, you at least have to give Dabo Swinney credit for being honest about his thoughts. He's been consistent on that line, and then he votes Ohio State 11th in the coaches poll, which pretty well sums it up. It doesn't matter whether it's on their mind or not. The game is going to happen. It does appear, number one. And number two, there is no doubt that Ohio State has played much fewer games than Clemson, Alabama, and Notre Dame. No doubt about it, and even Texas A&M. So I can understand that point of view. But the other point is, right there in Dabo Swinney's face is a team that wants to gain revenge for what happened to it the year before, and that's what I'm sure what he is most concerned about.
Joey, Tim's absolutely correct. Ohio State played 6 games. There's nothing they can do about it. They wanted to play more. It didn't work out. The way the conference handled things, it didn't allow them to play more. With that said, is that an advantage or a disadvantage for Ohio State that they played only 6 games?
I don't see how it's an advantage at all. I know some opposing coaches and Dabo and coaches in the SEC brought up the fact that it would help them. They would be well rested. But they played so few games where they've been really limited in being able to establish a rhythm, getting younger players reps. For the last month of the season, it was stop, start, stop, start. And I don't see how that allows your running backs to get in a rhythm. It doesn't allow you to maybe retool your secondary rotations and just cultivate any sort of depth. I don't think it's helped them in this game. I think it's going to be more of a hindrance.
Tim, as we look at some of the X's and O's, I've heard from people, I know you have, but some of the folks I've heard from feel like this Ohio State defense will really get exposed. And these are coming from some Buckeye fans, really get exposed against this Clemson offense. Talk them off the ledge. Why will that not happen on New Year's Day down in New Orleans?
No, just leave them up on the ledge is the way I look at it. Fans are fickle, man. On the one hand, they think their team should be in it. Their team should maybe be ranked number 1 or number 2. On the other hand, oh my goodness, they're having to play Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, et cetera. Urban Meyer on my podcast this past week, and Eddie George talked about it too, but Urban Meyer especially said this will be the best offense Ohio State has gone against by far this season. This was not a great year for offense in the Big Ten Conference. So, yeah, there are concerns there. But, Clemson has just as many concerns, I think, with facing a fully frocked Ohio State offense. If, in fact, Justin Fields can get back on the beam, get Chris Olave going, et cetera. This has all the makings of being of being a 30-something to 30-something game when you really break it down.
So you think we could see a shootout, Timmy?
Saw one last year. I mean, Clemson relied on a couple of 3 big plays, and then also relied on the officials taking away a touchdown from Ohio State to win that game. And that's how that game flipped. But the 3 big plays were huge in that game. That's what Ohio State has to guard against. That's what Ohio State has had trouble with on a consistency basis, guarding against this season. And then on the other hand, this is not the Clemson defense of the last couple of years, in my opinion. We'll see if they get after Ohio State, but I think Ohio State has enough weapons offensively to really get after Clemson.
Joe, as you look at the matchup, Ohio State's offense against this Clemson's defense, and I agree, I don't think this defense is near as good as it was a year ago that Ohio State will face. Where do you think the confidence level is right now for Justin Fields? Obviously, he had a couple rocky moments this season, but as Tim said, when he gets rolling with Olave, they're a hard team to beat.
I think it has to be shaken a little bit because we haven't seen this stretch in Justin Fields' college career where he's thrown multiple interceptions in a span of multiple games. One of the things that's been his calling card really since he transferred to Ohio State was he was careful with the football. He didn't throw interceptions. He was cautious, and it has to be rattled a little bit. And just the health is a factor with his thumb, I think, going into this game a little bit, obviously, as we've kind of discussed. And last year he dealt with the knee injury in the playoff game. So that was the other high leverage situation in his career where you're in a big time game and you're limited a little bit. So I think it has to be shaken, but I mean, good players are able to kind of shrug it off and move forward.
Tim, you and I have talked at length about last year's game between Ohio State and Clemson. I personally feel like Ohio State outplayed them, should have won the game, did everything but win the game. A couple key plays here or there, a couple missed calls was the difference. Ohio State felt the same way. Ryan Day, I'll never forget how much of a burn he was on. Are they able to rekindle that feeling? So it seems like it's been 1,000 years ago because of COVID, but do you think they're able to rekindle that feeling from a year ago, the feeling they had when they left that game?
Well, the main reasons Wyatt Davis returned to Ohio State this year was to get a chance to possibly play Clemson again and play for the national championship. Same thing with Sean Wade. That can drive you from the standpoint of inspiration. But these are 2 different teams compared to a year ago in a lot of respects. Just like when people were asking me, does Ohio State have to win 59-0 like it did over Wisconsin to get into the college football playoff again this year? Do they have to do that against Northwestern? I kept saying, you can't duplicate what happened in the past. You just got to win games. And we all saw what a struggle that was for Ohio State in the first half against Northwestern until it got its act together. You can't dwell on the past. You've got to attack what's in front of you. And I think Ryan Day is making that point to his players loud and clear. But obviously, you summon everything you can to inspire your football team before it goes out on the field. But believe me, man, that's that old saying, most people had a great plan against Mike Tyson, though they got hit in the face. Buster Douglas was the guy who was able to carry it out. You got to be Buster Douglas on this coming New Year's night.
Tim, the Buckeyes are 0-4 against Clemson. Is Ryan Day aware of that number, and is it in the back of his head?
I think all of Buckeye Nation is aware of it, and definitely Ryan Day is aware of it. And obviously the last time they played, it didn't go so well. And of course, in the Urban Meyer era, I forgot how many times he was shut out, but that was one of them, 31-0, several years ago, 2016. So, yeah, I mean, how could Clemson not be in the Buckeyes' heads in one form or fashion? 0-4, the last game that Woody Hayes ever coached, the last game that Braxton Miller ever played at quarterback for Ohio State, were in losses to Clemson, right on down the line. It's like, what a glorious history, football history Ohio State has, except against Clemson.
Joey, look at Clemson, look at Ohio State. Is Clemson better than they were a year ago? Is Ohio State better than they were a year ago in your mind?
I think Clemson's a little different. I don't know if either team is quite what they were last year. I think where Clemson maybe the most different is on their defensive line. They don't have some of the same depth and top-level talent that they had in the past. And the same goes on the offensive line, where they lost 4 of their 5 starters from last year and don't quite have the same juice up front. And I think maybe that's where Ohio State could take advantage of Clemson is that they're maybe a little stronger up front. And but where Ohio State's probably not as good last year is in the secondary. I don't think they have quite the same talent at cornerback without Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, some first-round NFL draft picks at corners. On the flip side, Clemson doesn't have the receivers that they've had before, and Justin Ross and T. Higgins. So I don't know if either team is quite what they were last year, and I think some of that evening out may favor Ohio State a little bit.
Tim, nothing normal about this year. Ohio State will fly in the day before the Sugar Bowl, play the game, get on the plane, and come back home. How do you think that will play? And I guess that's the way you have to do it now, don't you?
Yeah, that's the way. I mean, you don't need to get caught up in bowl hoopla, especially on a year like this one. This is like no other. I mean, what you're hearing is New Orleans is maybe a day or so away from like shutting down some of the bars and restaurants, or really curtailing activity down there. It's not going to be the same New Orleans that Ohio State played in the last time it was there. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, as few risks that you can take from from exposure to COVID-19, et cetera, the better off you are in a year like this.
All right, man, prediction time. We'll start with Joey Kaufman. Who wins and why?
I think Ohio State, I think they're due to get the monkey off their back with Clemson. I don't think Clemson is quite the same talented offense that's matched up against Ohio State in the past, without the offensive line depth and without the receiver talent. So I think this is the one where Ohio State is able to piece together. Maybe Game 7 is where things click for Ohio State, and they eke one out this time.
Tim, how do you see it?
Clemson's not faced an offense as diverse as Ohio State's this year. We can talk about Justin Fields' problems the last couple of games. Flip side of that is they found a running game that is bona fide against one of the best run defenses in the country a couple of weeks ago against Northwestern. Trey Sermon is definitely a different player than he was. I see that giving Clemson problems. I do believe that this is going to be, in some form or fashion, a scoring shootout. We'll see how it develops. Trevor Lawrence is as good a player as there is in the country. These two quarterbacks have been champing at the bit to get after each other again. I think it could be a wild one in the Superdome.
Who do you have?
Oh, I got Ohio State winning. I think Ohio State can outscore Clemson.